hi everybody.
So
Thank you
Nora,
for
yes, thank you for
being
having
here.
us.
So
And Nora,
normally Bridget and I are together. We're definitely not used to being apart. So I feel
no, like
our
I need you on my left side. So I guess technically looking at you right now, you are on my left side, but I am in quarantine right now. I was exposed to COVID on Friday. I tested negative yesterday. So I'm hoping my next test is negative, but that is why Brooke and I cannot be together today. But I'm feeling good and ready to teach and educate you guys, which I feel very thankful for because I was afraid that this was going to be jeopardized by the situation, and it's not. So let's do this.
yeah. Okay. So we're the Speech Sisters. I'm Brooke.
Bridget.
And we really are sisters in real life. I'm 2 years older. We are speech and language pathologists and have been for longer than I want to admit. And we are moms. We have 5 kids between the 2 of us. And, we started a private practice here in Southern California. This is where we live. We opened a private practice in 2012. And over the years of working with families and children and parents, we saw this need for really parent education in the world of early intervention. And we work a lot with late talkers, so children who are a little bit late to talk. And what we realize is that so much of what goes on and the help that these kiddos need can just really be done in the home by the parents. So a lot of what we were doing was parent coaching, and we were finding the most success and the most progress through that. So then we said to each,
Well, and we between the 2 of us, we have 5 kids, and across the board, every one of our kids was an early talker and just really excelled in communication. And we just kept getting, our friends would say, like, that's just because you're a speech pathologist. And we would say, yes, because we do know how to speak to our child with the intent of building their language, but we are fully confident that parents are capable of doing the same thing. And that's how our mission started.
Exactly. And so we thought, okay, well, let's get this out here and, let's get it out to the world. Let's share our secrets with everybody. And so we started an Instagram platform. We thought that was a good place to start. And we then created a couple of online courses for parents. And here we are. We're just doing what we love, and we're reaching more families, and it's just,
so many more families. It's just been incredible. And it's just been so awesome to be able to have a resource for parents at their fingertips, whether it is our free advice on Instagram or our online courses, especially, anytime these things are good, but especially in times of COVID, because a lot of these parents are at home with their kids a little more than normal. Some people can't get the early intervention speech therapy that they were getting before, and they're trying to do it on Zoom, and it's too hard with an 18-month-old. So it's just like the timing was right, and we just feel so blessed to have created this unknowingly before this life situation happened and be able to have this resource for all of you.
Yes.
So that's a little bit about us.
Yeah. And so today our talk here is how do you know if your child is talking on track? So I think this is a question that so many parents have. I know, when my kids were little, I didn't really have it because I knew, because I'm a speech therapist, but all of my friends would ask me, Bridget, I know you had the same experience. And so it's hard because you're pulling resources and you're Googling and you're trying to find it from a whole different, lot of places. And
or comparing your child to like friends and siblings, and it can get confusing.
Absolutely. So we will do our best to streamline all the information and present it to you here tonight.
So we want to start off by talking about speech and language. So we are speech and language pathologists, and speech and language are actually 2 different things. So speech encompasses speech sounds, producing and articulating and pronouncing certain speech sounds. Okay, so that's the speech portion. And then language.
What you do with your mouth. It's what you do. It's how you create what you do with your mouth. Yeah.
Yes, and for today's purposes, we're actually not going to get too much into that. That comes a little bit later down the road. But today we're going to talk about the language piece of what we do. And language then breaks down into two other segments: expressive language and receptive language. So I don't know if you want to
Yeah, so receptive language is one's ability to understand and comprehend language. And then the expressive component is the output. It's what you can say or one can say. So, with a child, we certainly look at both in terms of communication milestones. There are milestones for receptive language and there are milestones for expressive, and they are equally as important. For the purpose of today, we're going to focus a little bit more on the expressive language milestones. And just so you know, if you go to our Instagram, there's a link in our bio that is a communication milestone checklist, and it is a great resource. It's totally free, so we urge you to go there, look at it, download it, because then you can really dive in and see, okay, it's broken down into like 3 to 6 month chunks in both receptive and expressive language. So we can't cover all of it because we'd be talking for hours, but what we don't cover you can find there. And so we'll just get talking right now about the expressive language milestones.
So before we talk about that, I just wanted to touch base on what is a milestone. So a milestone is indicating what approximately 90% of that age group is able to do. Okay, so that's quite a bit. That's a large number. So what that means in easier terms is what the majority of kids at that age group can do, what most kids at that age group are able to do. So with that said, that is why we look at milestones, because if a child is not meeting milestones, then most likely they're falling in that lower 10% of that age group. And at that point, we do urge parents to reach out to a specialist, talk to your pediatrician, talk to a speech and language pathologist. Early intervention is so key. So that is what a milestone is. Now, before we kind of get into some of the expressive language milestones, I also want to explain this. Because a milestone indicates what approximately 90% of that age group can do, there's also other numbers out there in this world. You see the milestone numbers, and then sometimes you'll see average numbers. And average is a bit more indicative of what 50% of that age group can do. So when Brooke and I really started this Instagram and we wanted to get all the research, everything we do is evidence-based, we were putting out milestones, and then a few times we put out averages, and we thought, these aren't matching up. The milestones are a bit lower. The averages are here. What we find are pediatricians follow those milestones. Speech language pathologists lean a little bit more toward the average. So how confusing is that to a parent? What is right? Is it the milestone? Is it the average? And the truth is that both are right and both are okay. And the bottom line is there isn't one number that a child should have at a certain age for the number of words they should say. Every child is different, every child is unique, and every child develops at their own pace. That's why we came up with the term the expected range. So you have that milestone, you have that average, and anywhere in between is typical and expected. So that's a little bit, shed some light on that. We have an awesome blog on our website called How Many Words Should My Child Say? And we really dig into it and explain it to you. And we have an awesome chart on that blog and also in our Instagram that shows it all in chart and graph form. So it's very easy to follow there. And we'll touch a little bit more on that aspect of milestone versus average as we talk about these numbers, because we're going to say, okay, at 18 months, a child should say, and guess what? We're not going to say just one number. We're going to say between this and this. And that sometimes that gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it kind of blows your mind like, whoa. So my child could be saying 50 words or 300, and both of those are okay. And the truth is yes.
Yeah.
So I hope that explained that a little bit.
Well said. Very well said. Okay, so let's start off with thinking about our babies, right? So babies express themselves actually from the time they come out, because crying is a way of expressing themselves. So they are communicating to you. They're telling you that they need something. They're hungry, they're wet, they're tired. But what we really want to hear, what we so long to hear, are those first coos from our baby. And those usually happen between 2 and 4 months. So those are vowel sounds. Those are like, ah, oh, things like that. And they're just content, kind of happy baby sounds. And again, we hear those usually between 2 and 4 months. Then between 4 and 6 months, your baby might start like giggling or laughing a little bit. That's another way that they can express themselves. So there's crying and there's laughing and there's cooing and there's babbling. And
Babbling big.
Babbling is big, and that is a big precursor to language down the road, to those first words. So that is a question that we ask families all the time. Is your child babbling? Did your child ever babble? That's a big one that we like to really talk about and hone in on. So babbling can begin as early as 4 months and as late as 9 months sometimes. So there is a range. Again,
just the range we just talked about.
Exactly. There is a range, but we do like to hear some sort of babbling by 9 months of age.
And if a child's not babbling by 9 months, we just always recommend reaching out to your pediatrician. We, as speech therapists in our private practice, if a child is not babbling, we do recommend, that child seeing a pediatrician and also potentially getting a hearing screening, just to make sure that they're hearing everything and that couldn't be playing into the lack of babbling.
Exactly. Yeah. So then after babbling, around 12 months, we want to hear those first words. So again,
So
and this
bad.
will really, yes, so bad. Mama, especially mama. So this
Which
is
actually, sorry, I'm going to cut you off there. We have a video on our IGTV, 4 ways to get your baby to say mama. It's really cute, and it's worked for so many people. So check it out. If your baby hasn't said mama yet, and you're dying to hear it, check that out.
Yeah.
But that should happen around 12 months.
Exactly. And this is when we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the milestone versus the average, right? So at 12 months, the milestone is one word. So about 90% of 12-month-olds are saying at least one word. But the average is more like 5. So 50% of kids are saying about 5 words, and it could go beyond there or, anywhere in between.
Yeah.
That's considered normal, typical development.
Mm-hmm.
Then we look at 18 months. So by 18 months, the milestone is 10 words. So your child should have at least 10 words by 18 months. The average is 50. So again, that gap is like actually getting bigger, but it's all okay. Anything in between there is fine. Oh, and guess what? Signs count as words.
I was just going to say that. I was thinking, they're probably thinking, okay, well, what counts as a word?
Yes.
And that's something we get asked all the time. Signs count as words because signs are words. Also, animal sounds.
Yeah.
Those count as words. So if you say, what does the cow say? And your baby says, moo, then that counts as, you can count that as a word, which is so cool. Also word approximation. So if your puppy's barking on the floor and your baby says, da, da, and doesn't say dog and articulate it perfectly, then that also counts as a word. Now, the key thing to recognize is that your child is saying the word or sound or sign independently, which means you're not modeling it first and then they're repeating it. They do it on their own consistently and
independently. Oh, sorry. No, you said
intentionally.
Intentionally, yes. So that they have connected the meaning with the word. So that's a big thing. So a lot of times parents will say to us, well, my baby says mama, 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 mama all day long, but I don't know if, he knows that it's me. So that's a big thing. I think, and finally you will kind of start to know that when they make that connection and they are intentionally saying mama, that is definitely counting as a word. Before that, it's more of a babble. And
Yeah.
that's okay too. Again, that's a precursor.
Yes.
So yes, those are all
Independently, consistently, intentionally. Those are our three things. And that is all in our blog, How Many Words Should My Child Say? We give that breakdown in there too. So if you forget it, you can check that out.
Yeah. Okay, so then we talked about 18 months, 24 months. So your child's 2 years old. The milestone is 50 words. So we want at least 50 words by 2, but the average is 300.
That's like,
Big.
and that's where you see that gap just get crazy. And I think parents are like, how can that be? And we think the same thing. I mean, it's just such a big range, but you guys just think of this. Every child is different.
Yeah.
You know, we're all unique beings.
Yeah. And I think that range gets so big at that point because some kids at that age do have what we call a language explosion where, you know, they learn language, they hit like 50, 100 words, and then they just boom, take off and their vocabulary grows so fast. This doesn't happen with all kids, but for the kids that do, they're the ones that are, you know, up to 300 or more words. And again, there's a range where that can happen. It can really happen anywhere between 2 and 3. And sometimes it doesn't. Some kids are just more gradual learners. So every child is different. We say this over and over and over again, but it's so important that you try not to compare and just, you know, again, as long as your child is meeting the milestone, that is what is important. And that's what you really want to look at. And then just the last one, I'll say at 3 years old.
Sorry, can I back up really quickly? Because that one more thing at 2 years old that I think is so important for you parents to know is that there's the range, right? At 24 months or 2 years old, the milestone is 50. The average is 300. But there's another thing we look at. We want children at 24 months to start combining 2 words together, like more milk or bye, mama. And if a child is not starting to combine words together, that also can be, I don't want to call it like a red flag, but a reason to reach out to a speech and language pathologist.
Yeah, exactly. That is a milestone that should be met by 2. So we do definitely want to mention that as well.
Yes.
And then at 3 years old, the milestone is for the child to be saying a minimum of 250 words all the way up to 1,000. That's the average. So again, massive, so big. And at 3
so
years,
big.
The child should be putting at least 3 words together. Sometimes it's more like 4 or 5.
I mean, sometimes it's 10 by that point.
Right, exactly. But again, the take home is that, you know, there is a range, and I think as parents, it's important to know that there is a range and that anything within that is considered normal or typical in development, and really just know what that range is and know where your child should be at. Because if they're not meeting the milestone, you know, there are things that you can do and should do, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Or even if your child like is falling pretty close to the milestone or, you know, just hitting the milestone, we still encourage parents, like use some of our tips and tricks off of Instagram or like take one of our courses, because those things can help you and help your child boost up closer to here, right? So we want to kind of like give them that advantage, and sometimes just tweaking our interactions throughout the day during our daily routines can do just that.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a whole kind of pediatricians often at that 18-month visit, if the child is like not quite at the milestone or right around it, you know, they'll say, like, let's just wait and see. We'll check back at 24 months. We'll see where they're at. And this, like, in those situations, those are the times when, you know, Bridget and I will say, okay, yes, all right, wait and see, but don't just sit back and wait and see. Like, like have a plan, and like, this is what you can do, you know, when you're at home with your child, and these are some tips and tricks, and we'll get into those next. And
that is like, I really think that was what really like got this whole mission going for us and why we wanted to create Speech Sisters, because running a private practice over the last 8 years, we have had hundreds and thousands of clients who we work with who are like, I wish I would have started a little bit sooner. Like, went to the doctor and they just said, wait and see. And now here we are at 24 months or 26 months. And like, I could have been doing something. And we were just like, this shouldn't be this way. Wait and see is okay sometimes, but in no chance in no situation should a parent go home during wait and see and not be given some sort of guidance.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
just, because your child, we have seen it time and time again that having that little bit of guidance can really make such a big difference within a few months.
Yep.
And sometimes you can avoid like having to
Yes.
do early intervention and all of that. So
Exactly. Or the
it's,
number of times that a parent has said to us, I just wish I knew that. If I had just known,
yes,
that little thing to do, that one little thing, oh, that would have been so easy. I just never thought of it. I didn't know it. So,
right,
that's
exactly.
why we're here.
Yes. So that kind of brings us into some of our tips and tricks.
Yes.
So, tips and tricks are going to be a little bit different. They change from when you're working with a baby and being a bit more proactive as a parent and helping your child meet communication milestones versus a toddler who maybe isn't meeting communication milestones and you want to get them meeting those milestones if they're missing them. So, a couple of our favorite tips for babies. The first one is parent ease. And I feel like Brooke does such a great job demonstrating parent ease. So I'm going to pass that over to you.
Oh gosh, I had to have a parent ease voice on Good Morning America for millions of people. So yeah, I guess I got it down.
You
Okay, so
dodged that bullet.
uh, parent ease is otherwise known as baby talk sometimes or infant directed speech. It's when we use a higher pitched, exaggerated speaking style with our little ones. To some of us, this comes so natural, and you see a baby and your voice goes up like that. And for other people, it's like, I can't do that. I don't want to sound like, a princess.
Yes.
So it sounds a little bit like this. Hi. Oh, I see you. Oh, I see your nose. And yeah, exactly. Peekaboo. Like it's a sing-songy. And guys, let me tell you, it works.
It
It
works.
is captivating. Your baby loves this. Your
Mm-hmm.
toddler probably would still love this.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so important when they're babies to do a little bit of this with them because you're capturing their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have their attention, they're more likely to learn language from you. And so there are so many studies on this, and it works. It is a thing, and it is powerful.
Yeah. And we always say, like, I think for me and Brooke, it just comes maybe a little too naturally. Our mom is like, she's got parent ease down like nobody's business. So I think that we have just been exposed to it for, I'm not going to say how many years, but many. And now, with our own babies and in therapy, like we just go into that mode, but we know it's not comfortable for some parents. So we'll just say, like, behind closed doors, when you're home with your baby, like, give it a try. And it doesn't have to be like, hi, like maybe like I would do it, but just get your voice going up and down in that sing-songy pattern to your comfort level because it works. And sometimes dads do this, and it's great. Get daddies doing this too. It's parent ease. It used to be mother ease. It's parent ease. So mom voice, dad voice, whatever you want to call it, everybody get involved, and it does great things.
And so you might be thinking like, okay, I can use this voice, but like, what am I supposed to say? What am I saying? Well, just talk to your little one. It is so important. And it feels weird sometimes. You're like, I don't know what to talk about. I actually remember having my daughter and she was a newborn and I knew I needed to talk to her, but I was like, she's so little. She doesn't understand. This feels weird. Like, what do I felt that.
Yeah.
But you want to talk your child through everything. You want to talk them through what you're doing. You want to talk them through what they're doing. And again, start this early. Start this when they're babies because they hear you. And they love to hear you. They love to hear your voice, especially when you use parent ease. And this builds their language. When you give them all this language, and you don't have to be like, okay, now we're going to the store and we're going to hurry up and put your shoes on. Like, you don't want to speak a mile a minute. I mean, sometimes this is going to happen. This is like how I speak every day to my kids now. But just if you can, slow down, simplify your language, have that more sing-songy, high-pitched voice. talk to them. I'm putting your shoe on. Here's your shoe. Let's put it on. You know, and you're almost kind of singing, and they grasp it. They love it.
They do. And I think the other tip for babies that we find to be so helpful, because these babies are like, they come into the world, they don't have any language. Like, it's our job to build their language, and this just happens naturally, and that's the beauty of language. But one way where you can help your child build their understanding of language, because your baby needs to build their understanding of language first, their receptive language. We have a cool picture in both of our courses. Receptive language is like the ground here. And then we have a ladder that we call the expressive language ladder. And only once you have a solid receptive language ground can a child climb the expressive language ladder. First, they have to understand it, then they can say it. So what we love, our second tip, is using gestures and also showing items as you display them and talk, or display them as you talk about them. So for instance, I have a glass of water here. I might say, water, water. I mean, put it on my baby's hand. It's water, or shake it, and you repeat that word over and over. But it's just brings so much more meaning and understanding to our little ones to show them. I mean, I also have my phone here, so you might say, phone, bring, hello, phone, and show them. Or using gestures. So I might be reading a book, and we have a bunch of these IGTVs and reels on Instagram talking about gesture use. One book, I think I did a reel like a couple weeks ago on a book called Opposites. And I just really exaggerated and showed how I read a book and how I read books with my little ones and my clients. If I'm doing big, I'll say, he's big, and he's tall, and short, and small. And you really act it out, and they get it. They get it. If you do that time and time again, they're like, I know what water is. I know what big is. I know what tall is. It just clicks. So get animated.
Yeah. You're pairing an action or a gesture with the word. So you're giving them the vocal, the expressive, and the meaning, the receptive. You're building both at the same time even, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are like a few of our favorite tips for babies. We definitely go into more detail on Instagram. We have a course just for babies that we'll talk about in a little bit that definitely has more tips in there. But those are a few of our favorites.
Yeah. And then for toddlers, we've got a couple things to talk about for toddlers. And I feel like there's millions of things for toddlers, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's so many, it's hard to narrow it down. But one thing that I think is so powerful, and this is one of the things that so many parents will say to us, oh my gosh, I never thought to do this, and it makes such a difference, and it does.
And it might be the most basic thing.
Yeah.
We've had people be like, that's so easy, and how in the world have I not been doing that? How did I not know to do it? And what it is
to wait. Just wait. So
couldn't hear you for a second.
Oh, okay. We're just constantly in a rush. I feel like we're always just, moving so quickly, and we're in a rush. And when our kids are not talking, when our babies or our toddlers are not talking, we talk for them because we want to help them and we want them to talk, and we don't want to wait. We just need to get it out, right? So.
Well, and I think it's a little confusing because we coach parents. We're like, talk to your baby. And then we're like, now wait. And they're like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to talk to the baby, or do you like, well, we want you to do both.
True. We want you to do both. And that might be confusing, but you want to talk to your baby. So you can start the conversation. So you can say, and this is again, baby toddler, but shoe. You're showing the shoe. Shoe. Where should we put the shoe? And you wait.
And they might not even say anything. They might just like point to their foot. Your foot, you're right. Because it's important for us to know, like, communication doesn't always have to be verbal. It can be a gesture, it can be pointing, it could be a sound, it could be a sign. So wait, but if your child gives you any communication attempt right there, praise.
Yes.
You want to give that big praise.
Exactly.
You might do it with fill in the blank. This is my favorite. Like I swear to God, fill in the blank is what got my kids talking so early. I am like the fill in the blank lady. I would say, oh, Stella, look, I'm going to drink the. You're supposed to say it, Brooke.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, what?
Brooke
Water. I was waiting for Stella to say water.
If the child doesn't say it, and you say it for them. So I would have said, like, if they just look at me like, huh, I would say, drink the water. I'm going to drink the water. But that waiting piece, especially during books and songs, is so huge because books and songs, they're repetitive. You've done them a million times. Just like those rote phrases, put on your shoe, put on your, and you're showing it, your child knows, I put on my shoes like 10 times a day, every day. And they'll fill in the blank. So
exactly.
Waiting.
And one of the things that you just did, Bridget, which is maybe why I didn't respond because I was watching you do it, but she held up the water and she said, I'm going to drink the, and she made the mouth movement. So that's, once your child gets to that level where they can attempt the word, that's another really powerful tool, especially during fill in the blank.
I'd say like that was another huge thing that I feel like I really picked up when I was with Stella, like trying to get her to talk. I don't know I did it as much with Ben, but boy, I do it a lot with Stella. And she just got that cue from me, like my mouth movements. At first I would say, I'm going to drink the ooh, ooh, and give her like a sound. Then I would move it to, I'm going to drink the, and I would just like hold my lips. And she's like, water. She would just fill it in because she knew. So try these things. And all of these tips, like we said, they're in our Instagram. You start digging, and also in our courses.
Yes, you'll find them. And then this is a really good one. So, okay. You want to create opportunities for your child to have to talk, okay? So for toddlers, you're dealing with maybe at starting around 18 months, like a lot of personality comes out and maybe some behaviors, maybe some tantrums. And so you have that going too. But so I think it's really easy for parents to get into the habit of just giving their child what they need before they even have to ask for it.
Yeah.
And, that's what we do as parents. We anticipate our child's needs, and we've done this since they were born, and it's natural and it's innate and it's part of being a parent. But if your child doesn't ever have to ask or communicate a need or a want, if they're just getting it handed to them, why do they need to talk? They don't need to because they're just going to get it.
Right.
So you want to create the opportunity where they do need to communicate. And these things are really easy to do. So, it's dinner time and you give your toddler sitting in the high chair, his food, but you don't give him his water. His water is in his line of vision, but it's like on the counter and not near him, so he can't get it himself. Well, instead of just giving it to him, just wait and see. How is he going to communicate to you that he wants his water? It might be, oh, what's that? Water? Do you want your water? And anything. It might be a head nod. Yes, you want your water. And then you give the water. He might go, what? You don't,
Wawa.
Wawa, whatever it is. You've given him the opportunity where he has to communicate, and who knows what might come out. But it's really powerful. And that's another one where parents are like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, and it could be even like kind of manipulating them even more than that. So what if your child's crying, maybe if you keep the water away, but instead you give your child the water cup, but you don't put water in it. You give them an empty water cup and they're like, whoa, mom, that's not cool. Wait, you really screwed up. Your child, no matter what, as a toddler, is going to communicate with you right there. They might not say, hey, water, you forgot my water, but they might be like, or sign more, or sign water, or go, whoa, or just something, point even. And then we want to celebrate that communication opportunity. And at that point, you gave your child the opportunity to communicate, and you give yourself a chance to talk to your child about that word. water, you want your water. And then you give it, right? And then it's over. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out, but you set something up versus just, boop, here you go, and turning around to do the dishes.
Yeah, very powerful, very, very good to do and start doing. And we do have parents that are like, oh, but I've tried that and my child just cries and whines and throws a tantrum. And again, we're dealing with toddlers, so this could happen. So we just urge parents to, you don't have to do this all the time during every single interaction, but if your child is, happy and in a good mood and you feel like, oh, this might be the right moment to do something like that, like feel it out and use those moments. Or if your child's really interested in something, that's always a really good time to do these types of tricks and tips, because if they're motivated by an activity or something that they're doing, then they're going to be more likely to communicate. So
Right.
do it in times like that. Maybe it's during play or, something that they love to do, bath time, something like that.
And you could even like put toys up high, put them higher up on the shelf so that they're in sight, but like a toy that your child's going to want, or their favorite toy. What else? Put them in the bath and like don't turn the water on. Different things. I mean, there's so many different ways to get creative and set up those situations. So I think we have about like 5 more minutes of talking before we are going to answer some questions.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention some of the tips that we just gave. We have a cool PDF, and this is also in our link in bio. I don't know that we're going to have time to get into it in detail right now, but it's called 5 Things to Stop Doing to Get Your Child to Start Talking. And I just love this PDF. Like, I think some people get this PDF and like they're good to go after that. Sometimes, like, I've heard that. It's a really good one. There are things that we think as parents, I am doing the best thing to get my child to start talking. And then you read it and you go, oh, shoot, maybe I should stop doing this and try to do this instead.
Yeah.
So take a look at that. Check that out. For the last 5 minutes, should we just talk about book reading?
Well, we were going to talk about some red flags.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. Well, for book reading, if people are interested, we have a blog on that. It's called 6 Ways to Read a Book with Your Child and Keep Them Interested and Engaged, because we know that can be a struggle for many parents. Sometimes kids are just like, I'm out of here, I'm not interested. So check that out. All of the information's in that blog.
Yeah. Okay, and so we'll jump into talking about some red flags. So, when we talk about milestones, there's always the question like, okay, well, what if my child isn't meeting them? And maybe we should talk about that first. So if your child is not meeting these milestones, anything we talked about today, and again, there's so many more. There's the whole receptive language area that we didn't even really talk about. We know that that's how well they understand, follow directions, comprehend, but we really didn't even touch on that. So again,
just in case people tuned in late, go and get our free communication milestone checklist. The link is in our bio on Instagram. I think it says language milestones checklist. And there you'll be able to kind of make sure your child's hitting on those. And if not,
then do you want to tell about if you're in the US?
Sure. Yes, if you're in the US, it's a bit hard for us to speak on other countries and the protocol for trying to seek out speech therapy, just because we are not licensed speech therapists in other countries. We are in the United States. And if you're in a different country, talk to your pediatrician. They should be able to guide you to how to seek out early intervention. If you are in the United States, the CDC has an amazing resource. It's if you just put in a Google search, Act Early CDC state by state guide, then they will show you, there's like literally a state by state guide. You click on your state and they will show you different early intervention resources to call and figure out how to go about getting a speech or any type of developmental assessment for your child, whether it's speech and language, occupational therapy, cognitive, developmental, anything. So if you're having
birth through age 3. I think that's across all states. So early intervention, what Bridget just described, is from birth to age 3. When a child turns 3, then they're eligible to be tested and possibly receive services if they qualify through the public schools. So that's the other route to
Which is
take.
a free, and both of these, I don't want to say that early intervention is free across the board, because I do think that's been changing a little bit. Some resources prior to age 3 are free, and you can try to seek those out, but others will take insurance. So just kind of finding, I think it varies state to state. But through the public school district, that is free.
Mm-hmm.
So we always tell parents, if you're concerned, if your child is nearing age 3, right, like they're 2 years, 10 months, get in touch with your school district. You need to put something, you either need to call the district office of your homeschool in your town, or you can put something in writing, write a letter, email a letter, and typically what happens is they'll contact you within a few to 15 days. They'll have you come in, and they start off by doing a screening. And if your child seems to be a candidate for speech and language therapy, then they will then conduct an evaluation. And the evaluation will determine if your child would qualify for speech and language services. And if your child does qualify, then they hold what is called an IEP meeting. It's an individualized education plan meeting, where they will determine what the diagnostic criteria is and specific treatment goals to make sure that they can help keep your child on track.
Yeah. But again, this is for age 3 and up.
Yes.
And prior to that, the early intervention, birth to age 3, it's a similar, well, again, it varies state to state, but go ahead and check out that CDC, that, you can click on your state and
CDC Act Early.
Yeah, exactly.
That
and so basically, when do you do this? So you do this when your child is not meeting the milestone. If you get our milestone checklist and you're like, oh gosh, my child's not meeting receptive language milestones, they're not meeting expressive language. Okay, so then you're gonna reach out to either your pediatrician. You can go to this website. You could call a speech therapist if you know of one, or if you have a referral, or in your town or local. But that is when they're not meeting communication milestones. It could be receptive, it could be expressive, it could be both. That's when you want to reach out.
So some of those red flags, we'll kind of close with this. So some of those red flags would be like if your child isn't babbling by at least like 12 months of age, or they're not using gestures, communicative gestures. So maybe they're not, clapping after you or waving bye-bye after you by around 12 months. If they're not like having like that you can tell, like certain babies, if you're looking at them and you're smiling and you're doing that parent ease, they're enjoying it. They're smiling back. So lack of that smiles, lack of the giggles, that can be a bit of a red flag, like by 6 months.
Yeah. Also, lack of eye contact is a big one to watch out for. And
like any loss or regression of skills. Sometimes does happen though. So we have a lot of kids who will like gain a word and then they stop saying that word. And parents will be like, oh my God, is it a regression? And it can feel really scary. But typically, like sometimes motor and speech can like plateau and ebb and flow and take over each other. So a child may gain a word and then lose a word, but as long as they're continuing on that upward trajectory and not having an overall regression, it's not a red flag. But if you're seeing like they were communicating, they were gesturing, they were understanding, and like now they're not, that's more of a red flag, an overall regression.
Exactly. You can also look at play it's more for toddlers, but if your toddler is not playing with toys appropriately. So, when a child has blocks, we usually stack the blocks, or like a car, you would drive the car. For a child that just maybe doesn't play with toys the right way, or doesn't play with toys, period, right? Just kind of, gets fixated on one part of the toy, or again, just these like not typical play patterns. That's another thing, another type of red flag to look out for.
Not responding to, if a child doesn't respond to their own name by like 12 months, that's a little more concerning.
And by responding, it literally means like turning your head, just acknowledging that they've been called. Yeah. So things like
And
that.
that like lack of back and forth reciprocity. So like if you're a baby, like in our Talk on Track course, we talk about like going back and forth because that's so important, is having that back and forth reciprocity. And if your baby's not doing that by like 9 months, if they make a sound and then you make it back and it's not going back and forth, that can be more of a red flag too.
Yeah.
So there are, more of them, but just go back to that communication milestone checklist because that's really indicative of, the breakdown for each age group.
Exactly. So we're going to open it up to questions. I do have a few questions that were sent to us ahead of time, so you can feel free to type out any questions in the chat over here. But I will also, maybe there's Q&A.
Brooke, there are a few questions. I see 5 of them. Do you see them?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so first, just of the questions that were sent ahead of time, this one says, I have a 22-month-old who doesn't have any consistent words yet. She says, Dada, Mama, every once in a while. She comprehends language. What exercises or activities would you suggest doing with her to promote more speaking? So, I think we talked a lot about this today. I will say that a 22-month-old that's really just saying mama and dada is not meeting the milestones. Remember, at 18 months, we want a minimum of 10 words, and by 24 months, we want a minimum of 50 words. So this would be a little more concerning to me, where I would recommend reaching out to your pediatrician and or speech and language pathologist just for more possible testing, or at least a consultation. But in the meantime, doing some of the activities that we've discussed today, and our course, actually, the Late Talker, is perfect for this. And we haven't really even talked about our courses, but this particular course that we have, it's called the Late Talker, and it's for parents of toddlers, 15 to 36 months. These are for kids that are just a little bit late to talk, and we just give lots of tips and more specific tricks and really lay it out like a roadmap of what to do. And so I think that this would be really good too, especially during that, waiting time, because the evaluation process does take a little bit, no matter which route you go through. And so, this is what you can be doing at home while you go through all that.
Yeah, and it's also so important that parents know what to do at home. Even if your child is going to go into speech therapy, because we always remind parents, your child's in speech therapy, let's say like 2 times a week for 45 minutes, but you are with your child the most. You are the expert on your child. So it's so important that, you know what to do at home, however you become educated in that, whether it's, piecemealing everything on our Instagram account, doing a Google search, taking one of our courses, or having a speech and language pathologist that you work with who coaches you on what to do at home. But that's important.
Exactly. Okay, and then next question. I have a 21-month-old, really good at talking, but he talks with a lisp. Is this something that's pretty common? Does it go away on its own? So yes, we do see, well, first of all, a 21-month-old, we don't expect their articulation to be perfect at that age, not at all. And S is a later developing sound. So that doesn't come in, for a lot of kids, it comes in earlier, but the time that we like to see that developed by is around age 4 or 4.5. In terms of a lisp, that's a little bit of a tongue thrust, so the tongue is pushing through. So that can be caused by a couple of different things. If your child is a sucker, sucks on a thumb, sucks on a passy, sucks on a bottle, that what happens is it sets your tongue into this pattern of moving forward as opposed to being pushed back. So it's a thrust. And with excessive sucking, this is what happens. And then even when a child is not sucking, the tongue continues to push forward. So it could be from that, but some kids have lisps, some toddlers have lisps, and they've never sucked on anything, other than a breast or a bottle in their life. So
so Brooke's little one, like she sucked on a passy for a while. And but Brooke, we're writing an articulation course right now, you guys, because we, yes, some kids need articulation, but you can guide your child. So like if your child's younger than when that sound should be mastered, most speech therapists, if your child's 2 and you're like, they have a lisp, most speech therapists are going to be like, okay, circle back in 2 years. Yeah. So what do you do during that time? Just direct them. Like Brooke would say to Riley, like, pretend my teeth are like a cage, or your teeth are a cage and your tongue is a snake. Like, watch mommy. Good. Keep the snake in the cage. And if Riley would say, Brooke would say, I saw the snake. Can you make it in the cage and go in front of a mirror? So just kind of guiding that, and we'll have a resource out for that soon. But you can kind of guide them.
Yep.
Or try to eliminate the sucking.
Right. Yes, that too. Let's see. Okay, so my son just turned 2.5, has no issue with words and short sentences, but his pronunciation of many letters is hard to understand. The doctor said we should understand 90% of what he's saying, but that's a stretch. My 16-month-old daughter's few words are easier to understand. So yeah.
How old was he? Sorry.
2.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, again, a 2.5-year-old is still going to have some, it's normal for them to still have some articulation errors. That is completely typical. What happens is sometimes kids have a lot of them and then they are really hard to understand. So it's hard to know without knowing exactly what's going on.
And listening to it.
In listening. So I would say that if your pediatrician's concerned, if you're concerned, just reach out to a speech and language pathologist. It can't hurt. It's always better to be proactive.
Right.
So I would recommend that.
We have a blog on our website. I think it says I can't understand a word my child says, right? Something like that. Is that the title of it? Anyways, what we talk about in there is phonological processes. And I'm not going to get into it because it would take too long, but children go through these naturally occurring errors as they develop its speech and language. A child just doesn't start talking perfectly one day. It's a process to get perfection in articulation. And these processes should be suppressed by certain ages. So sometimes little ones just have a ton of phonological processes going on, and that's what can interfere. So take a read with that. You might notice right on there, oh my gosh, yes, my child's leaving final sounds off words. Oh my gosh, yes, my child is, not able to say 3 syllables, whatever it is. So that's a good resource.
Yes. Okay, so then we have some up here on the Q&A. So can you touch on by multilingual households? We are raising our son trilingual and wanted to see if you guys have any pointers or input.
We say go for it. The research says go for it. It's amazing. It's an amazing gift to give your child. And gosh, I mean, I think back years and years ago, people would say, stick to one language, it can confuse a child. No, that's not what research says. Children are completely capable of learning 2 languages. There's different ways to go about it. We have a blog called 6 Ways to Expose Your Child to More Than One Language, or 6 Ways to Make Your Child Bilingual or Multilingual. And I think it's really helpful to look at that, but all of the research says to go for it. So do it.
Okay, and then, can you explain what you mean by early intervention? So yeah, early intervention is, I guess it can be used in a couple different ways. Like here in the US, when you talk about early intervention services, it means birth through age 3. So many of the state services are called early intervention or Head Start or something like that. So that's really birth to age 3. But when we as therapists talk about all right, well, we want to get in there early. We want to start the intervention early or do some early intervention. That really just means getting in there as early as possible and, doing the work. And because your child's brain is like a little sponge, and so you don't want to wait, if they're struggling with their expressive language or their receptive language, you don't want to say oh, just wait till they're 4. No, you want to get in there, and if they're not meeting the milestones when they're supposed to, you want to get in there and start then. So that's really what we mean by that.
Yes. The next question says, my child may have about 40 words at 26 months, but only has 1 3-word phrase that she says. Should I be concerned? So she's pretty close to that 24-month milestone, even though she's a few months older. Like we said, we like them meeting those milestones because that's what approximately 90% of the age group can do. So if they're not meeting it, then definitely reaching out to a pediatrician to voice the concern and possibly reaching out to a speech therapist. So I would say, why not? If you could reach out to one just to have a screening done, then do it.
Yeah, it's great that she's using a 3-word phrase. That's great.
Really great.
Yeah.
Really great. Or like because she's saying so many words, because she's already saying 40 words, you could check out the Late Talker course. We teach you how to get your child, like what I was saying with that ladder, up the expressive language ladder, which is moving from those single words into 2, into 3-word phrases using our We Can Talk technique. So that could be helpful too if you don't want to go the whole therapy route quite yet and just like see how things progress over the next month or so. That's another option.
And while we're on the topic of our courses, just really quick before people sign off,
Yes.
we want to offer you guys for registrants of this course a 15% off discount. So you would use the code, what is it?
Peanut app. So peanut and then APP.
Yes, exactly. So we'll, just throw that out there now as we're talking about it. We can move on to the next question.
And then should we just say really quickly what those two are? So we have a course called Talk on Track. It's for parents of babies newborn through 14 months. This is more of a proactive course. If you have a younger baby and you want to help and ensure that they meet communication milestones as they grow. Then we have another course called the Late Talker, which is made for parents of children or toddlers age 15 months through 36 months. And we are in the process of changing the name of this course because this course is not only for late talkers. This course is amazing if you just want to help your child meet those 18-month and 24-month milestones. So we are renaming it into the Time to Talk Toddler Program because it's just time to talk, whether your child is delayed, whether you want to be proactive. So if you just want to get your toddler talking, the Late Talker, which it's named right now, would be the best bet. And again, you can use the code PEANUT app, PEANUT APP for 15% off.
Yes. Okay, what else? Let's see. Can we answer a few more? 2.5-year-old knows a lot of nouns, no phrases yet. Tips on how to teach more verbs, adjectives. Model them. Just use verbs. Use more verbs. Use more adjectives. And if no phrases, then you really want to model the phrase. You want to model 2 words at a time, or model 3 words at a time, whatever it is you're trying to,
we have in the Late Talker, we have a whole section called nouns, verbs, and more. And the next section is called lengthen. So it's like talking about using all of these different word types, because I think as parents, we get a little stuck on nouns. Like, oh, look, a dog, look, an airplane, look, a cup, look, the water. And we kind of forget to use those verbs and those pronouns to grow language. And for a child to move up that expressive language ladder and start using sentences, they need verbs. They need pronouns. You can't make a sentence without a verb. So we want to make sure that we're modeling it a lot. And as you do it, act it out. Throw, jump, dance. So really, using those actions while you say it.
Is there a point where a child preferring to use sign language will hold back their speech development? So research shows that no, sign language shouldn't hold back language development. I do feel like personally we've heard from parents that say that their child prefers to sign than talk. So I think it might happen sometimes where a child just, it's easier to, or they prefer to. So we just always say that when you're gesturing or using some of that baby sign, like really pair it with the word and emphasize that word, and eventually you stop doing the signs and you just say the word, so that you're modeling just the verbal word.
Yes, unless your goal is not for your child to be verbal. Like in the deaf and hard of hearing community, you do not need to pair a sign with a word. But we feel if your goal is to have your child talk, you're going to want to say more as you sign more. Because if you're just doing this as the parent, your child's not going to say more. They're just going to sign.
Exactly. Let's see. Our pediatrician wasn't too thrilled with our 18-month-old daughter using signs instead of spoken language. Is it okay for her to use the signs? Is there a way to move her from signing to spoken words? I think we just answered that.
Yes. Yes.
My 8-month-old is only interested in wrestling the board books. for me to put in her mouth. So I've stopped trying to read to her. Am I harming her eventual speech development? How do I get her to settle down? I'll let you do that.
Yeah, so this is the one I said we have the blog on. I'll touch on it super fast. So first thing, position. Face your baby while you're reading a book. So rather than facing them outward and holding the book out here, face your baby toward you so you can see each other. That way you can look at what your baby is looking at in the book, and your baby can look at you as you are articulating certain words. The big thing is have fun. Have fun with the book. Make it come alive. Pretend play with the book. If, I think there's like the Going to Bed book by Sandra Boynton or something. And I always do to Stella, like rock. And like I make the book come alive. Like we are acting it out or pretend playing it. And sometimes certain kids just need that. And you don't need to read all the words in the book at first. Some kids are not ready for that. And that makes them be like, ugh, she's reading and going on the whole spiel again, or daddy's reading and I can't handle all that. So cut it down. Just label some of the words in the book, have fun with it, pretend play, get your child comfortable with the book, and eventually you can move there. You can even use fun words and sounds. We have a book, I don't know, there's an IGTV I did, it's called Baby Says. It's awesome for starting to read to your child because it's exclamatory words like, uh-oh, no, 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 whoa, ouch, like big words that grab their attention. So I love Baby Says for that, which is on our Amazon page. And that link is in our bio as well under products we love. And also the other book is like Where's Spot? That's another really fun book that I feel like really gets babies.
That's a good one. Let's see, where are we?
Do you see personality taking a role in speech? My son can be shy around others and is generally quiet and focused in his play and activities.
I think yes. I mean,
Yes.
absolutely. And it's funny because sometimes, when we're working with clients, like the child will be like so quiet and more shy, and then you meet the parents and they're really quiet and shy. And so, it's definitely that plays a role in it. And I would say that it's also, shyness that can be part of what a toddler goes through, and just like toddler behavior and development and feelings and all of that. So there's so much more that kind of comes into it. So just, follow your child's lead, do what makes them comfortable. We want them to be still meeting milestones, right? So that's always the goal. So just making sure that like your child is able to say the amount of words that he should be saying and understand what he should be understanding. But if it's more of a personality thing, that is totally normal, and it happens to a lot of kids.
Yes. My 18-month-old just got a referral for speech therapy because he only says a few words. Is it too late for your course? No, not at all. 18 months is perfect for the late talker course. So you're in the prime spot for that. And also, you guys, take a look at, on our Instagram, we have a story highlight button called testimonials. And if you're on the fence or something, it's one thing to hear it from me and Brooke, but it's another thing to hear it from other parents and families who have had similar situations and who have had an awesome experience and helping their child move upward in their communication journey. So look at that testimonial button too. And then the second part of the question asks about the pacifier use during the day to affect words. So yeah.
If your little one has the pacifier in all day, then definitely. Some kids will talk through the pacifier, like, or with it, but then that really can affect articulation. So ultimately and we have a blog on this too.
Yeah. So we have a blog on this, but it's not on our website. We wrote it for Ryan and Rose, the pacifier company. So if you Google search Speech Sisters, Ryan and Rose pacifier, that blog will come up. And we are not like super uber strict with the pacifier use. We have a gentle weaning plan and we're pretty relaxed about it. So just check it out. But we do try to say, like, if you can get away from the daytime use when a child's talking, do that, because that's what impacts the speech and language and articulation.
Where can we find the PDF on 5 things? In our link, in the link in our bio on Instagram.
Yes. And it says, I think it says right there, like 5 things
Yeah.
to stop doing to get your child to start talking.
And then my son is 13 months. He babbles a lot. I'm pretty sure he's trying to say doggy and wawa when they bark. Does this count as a word, or should I be concerned? When should I be worried about him not saying mama or dada? So some kids don't say mama and dada. You know, that's not everybody's first word. So don't worry too much about that. Again, as long as they're meeting the milestone. If your little one is babbling and you feel like, again, it doesn't have to sound like doggy or wawa, or sometimes kids, it doesn't sound, but if it's consistent, so if every single time he sees a doggy, he's saying wawa, or you know, whatever,
right?
Yeah, then yes, that counts. So, or like a lot of times kids will, for a car or a truck, they'll go vroom. Like they won't say the word, they'll just make that sound, but that counts as a word.
Yeah, right.
It has meaning.
Yes.
So yeah.
It's independent, it's intentional, and it's consistent. Remember, those are the 3 things that count as a word. And we go over all of that in our blog. How many words should my child say?
Yeah. Do memorized learned phrases count into the milestone? Like take a bath, brush teeth, good night, turn around. My 30-month-old knows what these mean. So if this is about understanding, like comprehending, then that, yes, that if you say those words and he understands and goes and does what you're saying, then yes, that totally counts.
But it doesn't count in word count for expressive language. Like if your child isn't saying those words or, you know, signing them or something, then that doesn't count.
That's not expressive. If they're not saying it, it's not expressive. If they understand, it's receptive, and that's great, but expressive is different.
Yes.
Okay, and then
last one. Can you
be...
talk about stuttering? My 3-year-old started stuttering at 2.5 years old after the birth of her brother. It has gotten better and worse at times over the last 9 months, and right now I don't hear it. Are we in the clear? Okay, we just posted on this yesterday on Instagram, a chart that's super helpful. We also have a story highlight button called stuttering. So it will give you advice of things to do and not to do at home. But from what you're describing, it sounds like it's most likely what we call developmental stuttering. So there's true stuttering and then there's developmental stuttering. Developmental stuttering is super common, and it happens many times after a child has a language explosion and they start building their vocabulary. And what's happening is like their brain is just working a little bit faster than their articulators are. And so they get a little stuck. And what happens is oftentimes they'll repeat the beginning of words or phrases over mommy, 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 or I want my water. And it happens when they're excited or frustrated. So those are just some developmental milestones. They often, for developmental stuttering, they ebb and flow. Some days they're worse than others. And they also typically disappear, you know, within the year at the most, I would say. So take a look at that chart and that story highlight button. I think that will be really helpful. And if you do feel like your child ever starts, you know, really stuttering or getting stuck, if you ever feel like your child's like choking on a word, reach out to a speech pathologist, because that can be indicative of true stuttering.
And then one more question just came in. My almost 11-month-old babbles frequently and will periodically say mom throughout the day, but we aren't sure she knows what it means. Is this within normal range? Will it be obvious when she knows what it means? Okay. So that's great. So she's babbling. She might be starting to make that connection because she's saying it multiple times throughout the day. Show her, mom, mama, show her. When she says it, give her meaning. You teach her the meaning to that word and do that over and over again. Now that we have an IGTV video, I think we already said this, how to get your baby to say mama. And we show you like how to put meaning to it. So check that out. I think it'd be helpful.
Yes. Very.
And I think, is that it? Or any more questions? Or, oh wait, one more.
The 15-month-old isn't saying really any spoken words. His ped isn't ready to refer us for speech therapy. I am concerned. Okay, so this was kind of what we were talking about before. As speech therapists, private practice owners, we saw this time and time again. And that's why we were like, parents need a resource because sometimes pediatricians are like not that concerned, and they're thinking that the wait and see could be a good plan for your child. So if you decide alongside your pediatrician to wait and see, and you don't, you can decide on your own if you want to see a speech language pathologist. I think we should say that first. Like nobody needs to tell you that you can or can't do that. If you are concerned and you have a bad feeling or your gut's telling you to call for help or an evaluation, go for it. Like we say, go for it. But sometimes if you're not overly concerned, your child's still meeting those communication milestones, but you're like feeling concerned for whatever reason, our late talker course is an amazing first line of defense. It's just a great first line of defense, and 15 months is the perfect time to start it because you could work on it from 15 to 18 months. Many speech language pathologists do those first initial evaluations around 18 months. And you can see, okay, over the next 3 months, does my child start to meet those communication milestones with all of these techniques being implemented at home? And if not, then you might need that extra help.
Exactly. Thank you.
Aww.
Thank you. And then
Someone said, you ladies are awesome. Thanks for the webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Brooke and Bridget. This was amazing. So much good knowledge. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
There's
We'll make sure to send the links to your Instagram and the link in bio and mention the promo code in the email regarding the recording.
There was one more question. Should we answer the last one?
Sure.
Okay. I just don't want to leave that one person hanging. Our 18-month-old was referred for speech therapy. Would you recommend going to a place in person or doing speech therapy through Zoom? I just worry with them wearing a mask in person, it won't be as effective. It's tough right now, guys. It's tough.
Zoom therapy for an 18-month-old is really hard. I don't know what your child qualified for or where the concerns are, but if it's kind of what we've been talking about, like if your child's a late talker, if you're going to get therapy where the speech therapist can coach you as to what you should do, then I think you could do that through Zoom. But in terms of your 18-month-old sitting here, like getting therapy this way, we have not found it to be super effective. Right. But I get it. Then in person, you're with a mask and
some therapists have been wearing like a clear mask and a face shield. Yeah. So that's, something to think about. But you are taking that risk. So you need to be comfortable with that. We had one of our speech therapists this week come down with COVID and have to call families and like, that's why I'm in quarantine right now from that person. So it can happen, and we need families to know that can happen. So you need to kind of weigh out the risks and rewards. At 18 months, there's so much you can do at home. Yeah. There's so much you can do at home. So you can get coached by a speech therapist over Zoom, and you can implement those strategies. You can take our late talker course and learn what to do at home. And many times just those tweaks during your daily interactions at home can make all the difference in the world.
And then, yes, our courses are accessible to people outside the US. We've had some, like, I think like some countries,
like maybe like Dubai or something like that, it's not working taking credit card payments. If for some reason it's not, we can set up a PayPal transfer and give a coupon code for you to log in.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Trisha. This was so great.
Thanks for taking the time to answer everyone's questions. That was really great of you guys.
Of course. Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.